All right. So today I am going to be going over my earliest predictions for a 2028 presidential election. I think 2028 will be very interesting because it will be an assessment of, Donald Trump's second presidential term. Um, that was almost this election. And instead, we have an assessment of his second term coming in 2028. If I'm going to be honest, I don't think Trump is going to be very popular by 2028. I think there's going to be a lot of support behind Democrats to finally elect somebody. I think depending on what kinds of support you have, that's really going to determine who the Democratic nominee for president is. But I do believe whoever that nominee is will probably win the presidency. Who will they be their opponents? It's hard to say. I think the Republicans will probably cave to whoever Trump anoints as his successor. Some of the most notable possibilities, you probably have J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect. He's probably what a lot of people would see as like the most likely situation. You'd probably, you'd potentially see Vance decide not to run in 2028 just due to the political climate. I think it would probably be the smarter move on his end. And then, he probably would run in 2032 or 2036. He is on the younger end in terms of American politics, so I think it's entirely possible that he waits to run for president. So who else would you have on the Republican side? Well, obviously North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, his name has been thrown around among Republican circles, but I don't really see Republicans going with a North Dakotan governor for their nominee. I think they think that wouldn't really have anything special about it that would be able to bolster their campaign. I think you could see similar to the Democrats with who they go for. I think you could see 2022 midterm elected governors like Joe Lombardo. I could see them jumping into the fold and becoming big names by the time the primaries come around. I think, it's most likely, though, somebody in Trump's circle is going to be the person he anoints. And, whether or not he goes with Ron DeSantis will almost certainly run in 2028. DeSantis will probably go for the presidency, at least 2 more times before he gives up on it. He very much seems like he's trying to go for that. He may, similar to J.D. Vance, see 2028 is not viable. The problem he'd have there is he would probably need to get some kind of federal level position, probably Senate or House, in the meantime before he runs for president in like 2032 or 2036. But DeSantis probably, I'm almost certain he'll be running for one of the next 3 presidential elections. I could see him getting the nomination if he's able to galvanize support and earn a Trump endorsement. It really does depend on what the next 3-ish years of Florida politics look like. It really does depend on if he's able to get a successor elected in 2026. That would definitely sort of push for some support around him as a strong unifying character in 2028. But, if he doesn't earn the Trump endorsement, I could see it being very difficult to earn the nomination. Either way, I think if Trump ultimately picks the successor candidate, that candidate will lose. And so I think the 2028 Republican nomination will actually be something that a lot of Republicans may just straight up avoid, because they may see it as just not what they want. You could even see, someone like Vivek Ramaswamy win it, just because every other Trumpist figure avoids it entirely. It depends, how confident the administration is in their ability to elect somebody in their own wing to the presidency. The Democratic nomination, the primaries will probably be a very contentive race. I can very easily see it ending up like 2020, 2016, in 2008, where the Democrats very, very quickly narrow it down to two choices. In the case of 2008, that was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. In the case of 2016, it was Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And in the case of 2020, it was Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. So I can very easily see it narrowing down to that. In terms of the characters you'll probably be looking for, governors are always the ones that are looked at with the first initial perceptions as to are they going to be the ones elected? A name that has kind of blown up recently is Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. As governor of the most populous state, he kind of carries with him a bit of a, just an edge. Politicians from California, when they run for presidential office often do have just a kind of natural advantage, assuming they're the favorite among Californian Democrats. Newsom himself, I would say, is a rather unpopular politician. I think in terms of if they wanted to give themselves a good chance at winning the election, they would definitely not want to go with him, at least as of right now. And again, this is 4 years out, so obviously tons of things can change, but I think, Newsom will just have that natural edge. He's considered to be a top 2 candidate right now alongside Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. Whitmer is very interesting. She is, someone that multiple people I've talked to have said, yeah, she'd be a great choice for the Democrats in 2028. She definitely seemed to be doing exactly what she would do if that's her plan this year. She kind of just fully went all in on Kamala, and she otherwise, I think, remained relatively quiet. She definitely seemed like she felt like it was kind of her obligation to try and help Kamala win Michigan. Obviously, she seems to have failed pretty terribly at that. But, you also, I guess you couldn't really blame it on her. You'd probably more so have to blame it on the Harris campaign and the Democrats in general. One of the big things that we've seen with Gretchen Whitmer is she has just become someone that a lot of Democrats like. She would probably be able to galvanize a lot of support from progressives. She's seen as, I would say, more of a progressive governor than some of the other Democrats. She really has a lot of different opinions about her. I know progressives who champion her as a progressive. I know liberals who see her as more of a liberal. It's very much kind of a toss-up with really where people place her. I think she can be a very, very potential candidate come 2028. I think the one thing that will be holding her back is not necessarily the notion that she's a woman, but it's more so the fact that her being a woman puts her in the position of, having to convince Democratic primary voters that nominating a woman is going to produce a different result this time. Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris had absolutely just devastating defeats for the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying I'm not trying to imply that's my feelings about it. I have my own political opinions, but I'm saying in terms of for the Democrats, they were absolutely devastating defeats. You'll see a number of just kind of very hyper-partisan folk trying to pass it off as a sort of sexism thing, as a sort of, America hates women thing. I think more so it's just the fact that the Clinton and Harris campaigns have been just absolutely terrible campaigns by modern standards. We're kind of shifting into a slightly different era in American politics now, where, the the things you need to check off in order to be elected president are a lot more concrete and a lot less focused on rhetoric and who seems like the more unifying character. This isn't Cold War America anymore. This is an America that has a lot more willingness to look at things like the economy and solely judge who should be elected based on that. This election this year is a high testament to that. I think really, when you look at 2028, Whitmer will really have to present herself as a different candidate, as someone who will present change, as someone who will be significantly different from all of her predecessors, Republican and Democrat. I think if she can do that, I'm not going to say she'll be nominated, but I think she'll have a very real chance at getting nominated. I think it also, she very well could implode if she tries to do the same things that Clinton and Harris did, run on, at least in small part, on being the first female president, right? Get support behind her for that reason, make her base kind of push for that. I think also, if she doesn't deviate herself from the Biden administration enough, I think she will quickly run into some similar issues. I don't know if it will actually produce Republican results or other Democrats winning, but I think, again, a big part of the primaries in 4 years will be, how are you going to change things? How are you going to change the course of this party to not losing to Trumpists anymore? But yeah, Whitmer and Newsom definitely seem among most to be the top two candidates right now. Harris and Tim Walz, by extension, have kind of fallen off in the contention just because of how bad this result has been perceived. I don't think Tim Walz will run. I think he will probably, maybe try to stay in politics for a few more years, but then probably retire. In the case of, other Democratic governors, there's one that immediately comes to mind, and that's Josh Shapiro. Shapiro's big thing will be, can he get reelected in 2026? If he can get reelected in 2026, he has a very real chance at the nomination. If he cannot, that seemingly goes out the window. It's effectively a must for him to win reelection in order to have a very feasible chance at the presidency. He's been championed as sort of, a Democrat that has sort of an amount of difference about him. I think he'd be someone that voters who voted for Pete Buttigieg would be very interested in looking at in a theoretical 2028 primaries. Just because he presents, a lot of people paint him as pro-Israel. I don't know exactly the story on that. I just know he's Jewish, and so people tend to say he's very pro-Israel. Again, I don't know how true that is, but I know a lot of people champion him as sort of an opposer to anti-Semitism. And I could see him as someone that comes in and takes a lot of estranged former conservatives and former Republicans, and I can see him as someone that, swoops up those voters and maybe makes a run for the nomination. I could also see him as someone that people find unifying. The question will be, what will he look like on the national stage? And that will be a big question. I know in terms of strategy, he's obviously a good choice because he's from Pennsylvania, which in this election was the biggest battleground. Very well could also be a battleground, if not the biggest battleground in the next election. 2028, I think it's really going to come down to Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer. But I will say there are two other governors that come to mind. J.B. Pritzker can kind of be seen as a more experienced face. He also has a lot of money, so he very well could try to use Michael Bloomberg strategies as well as sort of a different campaign style to maybe make a run. Obviously, money right now is a big thing in politics. And so I think he really could I can see a feasible scenario where if he runs a campaign a specific way, he could appeal to Democrats enough to become a top dog. I could also see Wes Moore making a run. I mean, Moore has been seen as a relatively successful new Democratic governor in Maryland. I think the problem with Moore and Shapiro is they will be seen as less experienced than characters like Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom. So they'll have to overcome that. They'll have to really try and bring something to the table that differentiates themselves. I think a lot of voters, just purely based on ideology, will really be going for Whitmer. I think a lot of the Democratic establishment will probably want someone more who is a male and is more liberal. I can very, very easily see Wes Moore making a run in that regard. I think, he would need to choose someone like Shapiro for his VP, but you never know. Shapiro kind of seems like more of a VP choice right now, and I kind of compare that to another, not a governor, but a prospective senator. Looks like he's about to get elected, but a prospective senator, Ruben Gallego. He's been in Congress now for a few years, and he looks like he's going to beat Kari Lake. And although, personally, I wouldn't consider that to be a big thing to do, I do think Gallego could make a name for himself in a prospective primary in 2028. I do think he could come in and kind of entice the other nominees to consider him as sort of an option to try and appeal to Sunbelt Hispanic voters in the general election. So I very easily could see Gretchen Whitmer going with sort of a more, prospectively progressive ticket, but, going with Gallego for VP and hopefully trying to get elected based on that. I can easily see someone like Wes Moore or J.B. Pritzker or Gretchen Whitmer choosing Ruben Gallego for VP. But, I also think we very easily could see the continuing trend of, presidential winners not really choosing their main opponents for VP. So I think, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer being on the same general election ticket, I think would be considered to be relatively unlikely. I think it really does come down to who they nominate. If abortion rights come under significant attack during these next 4 years, which could happen, I'm not ruling it out, you will probably see Whitmer use that as ammo. Right now, Whitmer looks like the perfect candidate. It's just, will the establishment support her? That is really the biggest thing. And I think it's, right now I'd say if I had to put my money on someone, I'd put it on her just because I think she would be able to entice the establishment with the prospect of a victory and knowing that the Republicans will be vulnerable, most likely, and that, 2028 will be a time when, she has the opportunity to start up a new age and to bring in a president that becomes relatively liked. So, I think I'm kind of rambling at this point, but, I think in terms of 2028, I would say if I had to put my money, must put my money right now on somebody becoming our next president, I would probably say it's Gretchen Whitmer. Gavin Newsom may be a close second. I very easily could see Newsom coming onto the federal stage after his governorship and becoming a more popular character on the governor level. I think his issue will be he will be criticized for being someone that can be easily attackable by the Republicans. I think Whitmer will go all out on the notion that she is a safe, liberal, modern pick to, save abortion rights, to, take more, I guess you could say, pragmatic stances on certain issues. I think she will be the person that you will see a lot of Democrats shift towards. But again, the next 4 years, they are going to have various different politicians probably pop up as additional choices. We just had Josh Stein elected as governor, so it is easy that maybe he is so popular by 2028 time that he comes to be a very viable candidate to at least be on the vice presidential ticket. So, you never know. But I think right now, the most likely person I see is winning the primary is Gretchen Whitmer. I think she just kind of pulls everything together, and she's less attackable. So we will definitely see what that holds. But yeah, those are my thoughts for right now.